Here is something that almost nobody talks about, honestly. The men who are the most at peace in their 60s are not the ones who finally found the right girlfriend. They are the ones who stopped looking for one altogether. And before you assume that means something went wrong with them, before you decide they must be damaged or lonely or just too tired to try anymore, stay with this for a minute. Because what is actually happening with these men is the opposite of what it looks like from the outside. These are not men who gave up. These are not men who got hurt so many times that they shut themselves off from everything warm and real and worth having. These are men who paid close enough attention to their own lives for long enough to finally see something clearly that most people never see at all. That the girlfriend arrangement, that the label, the whole setup that comes attached to it, was never actually delivering what they thought it was going to deliver. And the connection they were really after, the genuine kind, the kind that feels free and honest and good without anyone keeping score, was only ever possible once they stopped trying to force it into a shape that was never going to fit them. These men carry that realization in a very specific way. It shows up in how they talk, in how they spend their days, in how they carry themselves when the subject comes up around other people. And once you understand what you are actually looking at, the signs are not hard to see at all. This video is about 5 of those signs. Not 5 arguments, not 5 reasons why they are right and everyone else is wrong. 5 real and observable things that show up in a man's everyday life when he has genuinely arrived at this decision. Not as a wound, not as a reaction to being hurt one too many times, but as the result of the kind of self-knowledge that only comes from living long enough and paying close enough attention to finally know the difference between what actually works for you and what you kept trying, because everyone around you said it was supposed to work. The first sign is that he has completely stopped justifying how he spends his time, and he does not even notice that he stopped. This one is easy to miss at first because it does not arrive with any kind of announcement. He does not sit anyone down and explain that things are different now. He does not make a point of telling people that his time belongs entirely to him. It just becomes obvious, gradually and unmistakably, in the very ordinary way he talks about his days. He mentions what he did on Saturday the same way he talks about the weather, plainly, without checking anyone's face to see if they approve, without adding an explanation for why he chose to spend the afternoon the way he did. He went out on the water early and did not tell a single person he was going. He spent a Sunday doing absolutely nothing, and there is not even a trace of discomfort when he says so. He changed his plans at the last minute because he simply felt like it, and the way he talks about that, the complete absence of guilt in his voice, tells you everything about where he is. And if you have spent real time around men who are still inside the girlfriend arrangement, you understand immediately how different that sounds. Because one of the very first things that changes the moment a relationship gets labeled, one of the earliest invisible costs that shows up before anyone has even had a conversation about what the word girlfriend is actually going to mean between these two specific people, is that a man's time stops being fully and unquestionably his own. It does not happen in a single conversation. But nobody sits down and says your evenings are shared property now. Your weekends need to be discussed before you commit to them. Your independent plans are going to need a little more thought going forward. It just starts happening. A comment here about why he did not mention where he was going. A look there when he comes back later than expected. A small and almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere when he makes a decision about his own life without running it past anyone first. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would hold up as a complaint if he tried to name it out loud. Just a consistent and gradual narrowing of the space around his own choices, and over months, and sometimes years, without a single direct conversation ever taking place about it. The time and freedom that used to belong entirely to him starts to feel like something he navigates carefully around another person's expectations. Senior men over 60 who have felt that narrowing happen, who remember exactly what it felt like to watch their own independence quietly shrink after a label arrived, and who went through the long and costly process of rebuilding it after the arrangement finally ended, are not going to let it happen again. Not because they are selfish, not because they stopped caring about others, but because they know with total precision what that freedom cost them to lose, and what it took to get it back. And the man who has genuinely arrived at this place is not walking around angry about the times it happened before. He is not carrying bitterness about the arrangements that cost him the most. He is just settled, completely and quietly settled in his relationship with his own time in a way that is not defensive and not performed and not something he needs to explain to anyone. His mornings are his weekends are his. Every Tuesday afternoon for the rest of his life is entirely his own business, and the ease with which he holds that, the total lack of guilt or apology or second-guessing in how he talks about it, is one of the clearest signs you will ever see that this decision is real, and that it is not changing. The second sign is that his money is completely his own, and he feels no discomfort about that whatsoever. This is the sign that gets misread the most consistently, and the misreading almost always goes in the same direction. People hear a man say he keeps his finances completely to himself, and they immediately decide he must be stingy. They decide he is the kind of man who withholds as a way of keeping control. They decide that a man who will not blur the financial lines in a relationship must not really care enough about the person he is with. That reading is not just wrong. It misses the entire reality of what is going on with a man at this specific stage of his life. Because a senior man over 60 who spent decades building genuine financial stability understands something about money that is almost impossible to understand when you are younger, and the future still feels long enough to recover from anything. At this stage, financial security is not just a comfort. It is the foundation that everything else rests on. It is the difference between a life that stays yours and a life that slowly starts belonging to the pressure of circumstances you did not choose. And the girlfriend arrangement has a very particular and very quiet way of shifting that foundation before a man is even registered that anything is moving. It always starts with things that feel completely natural. He covers a bill because he is there and it makes sense and he genuinely wants to. He plans something nice because they are spending real time together and the gesture feels right. He makes a choice to be generous because that is who he is, and generosity is something he actually values about himself. But what the label does, slowly, and without anyone narrating it, is turn those natural and freely made gestures into the expected baseline. The thing he did because he wanted to quietly becomes the thing that is simply how things work now. And the line between what is clearly and unambiguously his and what has effectively become shared starts moving. Not dramatically, not in any way that would be easy to point to and name in a conversation. Just steadily and consistently in one direction without a single real discussion about whether that is what either person actually wants. I've senior men over 60 who have watched that line move before, who have felt the particular discomfort of trying to reclaim a financial boundary that was never supposed to dissolve in the first place, are not being cold or unromantic when they decide to hold it firmly where it is. They are being honest with themselves in a way that takes real clarity and real courage. They are protecting something that took a lifetime to build and that cannot be replaced once it is gone. The man who has made this decision is not someone who refuses to be good to the people he cares about. The people who actually know him well will tell you he is often genuinely and quietly generous in the ways that matter to him on his own terms. He just does not allow that generosity to gradually become a financial arrangement that nobody planned and nobody agreed to, and that moves in a direction he never chose. The third sign is that his connections with women are genuinely warm and almost completely free of drama. And this is the one that surprises people the most, because everything they assume says it should be the opposite. The assumption is that a man who stepped back from the girlfriend arrangement must have ended up with less warmth in his life. Less real closeness, less of the genuine pleasure that comes from spending time with a woman whose company you actually enjoy. For most of these men, the reality is the complete opposite of that assumption. What disappears, when the label disappears, is not the warmth. What disappears is everything the label was quietly carrying that had nothing to do with the actual connection between the two people. The unspoken rules about how much time is enough and what level of availability is expected and where this whole thing is supposed to be heading. The low-level pressure that exists in any labeled arrangement where both people are aware, even if they never say it out loud, that there is a direction things are supposed to move in, and that not moving in it means something has gone wrong. The invisible scorekeeping that builds up so gradually inside labeled arrangements that most people inside them do not even notice it is happening until they are outside it and can finally feel the difference. All of that goes away, and what is left once it is gone is something that most people inside labeled arrangements have quietly forgotten is even possible between a man and a woman. Yeah, two people who are genuinely and freely choosing each other every single time they choose each other. Not because a label makes their presence an expectation. Not because stepping back would require a difficult and loaded conversation about what things are now. Just because they actually want to be there. Because the time together is genuinely good on its own terms, and that is the only reason either of them keeps showing up for it. Senior men over 60 who found this kind of connection after walking away from the girlfriend arrangement talk about it the same way regardless of who they are or where they came from. They say it feels more honest than most of the labeled relationships they spent real years inside. They say there is a straightforwardness to it that labeled arrangements almost never have because labeled arrangements carry just enough invisible pressure to make complete honesty slightly uncomfortable for both people all the time. The drama is gone. The tension that lives quietly underneath even the best labeled arrangements is gone. What they have instead is actual connection between two people who are both fully free and both genuinely choosing it, and that combination turns out to feel more real and more valuable than anything the labeled arrangement ever managed to produce. Keep watching because the next two signs are the most important ones on this list, and they are the ones that get closest to what is really happening inside a man who has made this decision at the level that actually matters. If this is already hitting somewhere real for you, go ahead and like the video and leave something in the comments. Tell me whether you are the man who has already arrived at this place or the one who is just starting to see it clearly for the first time. Because this conversation matters, and the only way it reaches the men who need it most is if the people who are already watching it help carry it forward. The fourth sign is that he is genuinely at peace on his own, and it is not something he has to work at or talk himself into. This is the hardest sign for people on the outside to actually accept as true, because it runs directly against a story that most of us absorbed so early and so completely that it feels less like a story and more like just how things are. The story says that a man living alone by choice is a man with something missing. That the shape of a full and complete life includes a partner in it, and that a man without one is either still looking or stopped looking, and either way there is a gap there that is supposed to be filled by something. That story is hard to argue with directly, but it falls apart almost immediately when you spend real time with senior men over 60, who have genuinely made this decision and who are not performing contentment for anyone watching. Because the thing you notice about these men, the thing that is impossible to fake once you know what real settled ease looks like, is that there is no gap, not a hidden one, not one they are managing or covering over with busyness or distraction. Their lives are full in a way that does not have a missing piece in it, because the life they built was built around exactly who they are and exactly what they actually need, without any compromise or negotiation required. The friendships that go back decades, and that have the specific weight and ease that only comes from that much shared history. The routines that are entirely and non-negotiably theirs. The mornings that begin exactly the way they want them to begin. The way they spend a Saturday that reflects completely and without adjustment what they actually feel like doing with a Saturday. The projects that matter to them. The quiet they choose when they want quiet. The company they seek out when they want company, and the complete freedom to seek it on their own terms and timeline. There is no restlessness in these men when relationships come up in conversation. No defensiveness. No careful performance of happiness that starts to crack if you push on it a little. They are settled in a way that is real and quiet, and that has absolutely nothing it needs to prove. And the reason they are settled is not that they trained themselves to stop wanting connection, or that they made peace with less than they wanted. It is that they found the version of connection that actually fits the life they built. and stopped trying to force a version that was always going to cause friction into a space where it was never going to sit comfortably. The fifth sign is the most important one, and it is the one that all the other signs are really pointing toward. He stopped trying to fit himself into an arrangement that was never designed around what he actually needs. And this sign does not show up as a single moment or a single decision he made on a particular day. It shows up as the settled result of a man who paid genuine and honest attention to his own experience across a very long stretch of time, and who eventually arrived at the only conclusion that his experience kept pointing him toward no matter how many times he tried to find a different one. He tried the girlfriend arrangement. He tried it more than once. He went into it each time with real effort and real care because he is not and has never been the kind of man who does things halfway. And he showed up the way a man shows up when he actually wants something to work. He gave it the kind of honest and sustained attempt that any real connection deserves. And what he found, not once, but across different people and different periods of his life, was the same pattern moving in the same direction every single time. The start was always genuinely good. The connection felt real and easy and mutual in a way that made him glad he tried again. There was something natural about it before it had a name. And then the label arrived, and everything that had been easy started getting quietly heavier. Not because of a single dramatic moment, not because either person suddenly changed into someone they were not before. Just because the label carries weight that no one announces and no one agrees to, but that begins working on a relationship the moment it is applied, whether anyone wants it to or not. The freedom that existed before the label starts to narrow. The mutuality that made the connection feel worth having starts to shift in one direction. The man who was simply and genuinely enjoying real time with a woman he liked starts to find himself managing a whole set of expectations that were never discussed and never chosen, and that consistently take more from him than the connection was ever built to give back. And a senior man over 60 who has watched that exact pattern play out enough times across enough different versions of the same arrangement eventually stops calling it coincidence. He stops looking for what went wrong with that particular person or that particular season of his life. He looks at the one consistent element across every version of the pattern, and he finds it every single time in the same place. Not in the connection itself, in the label, in the arrangement and everything the arrangement invisibly brings with it. And once a man sees that clearly, he cannot go back to not seeing it. He is not angry about it. He is not carrying resentment about the cost of figuring it out. He is just done. Done trying to make an arrangement work that his own lived experience has told him clearly and repeatedly is not going to work for him. The men who have arrived at this place are not cold. They are not closed off. They are not walking through their lives with walls up that keep everything real at a careful distance. They are often some of the most genuinely warm and open people you will come across because they finally stopped carrying the weight of an arrangement that was always working against them. They kept the connection, and they let go of the contract. And every sign in this video is just a different way of seeing that one choice from a different angle. A man who knows clearly what works for him and what does not. A man who stopped pretending otherwise. A man who built a life that fits him so well that adding the girlfriend arrangement to it would not make it better. It would just make it harder. And he knows that now in a way that is settled and quiet and completely his own. That is not a man who gave up on real connection. That is a man who finally valued himself enough to stop accepting the version of it that was never actually working. Leave a comment below and tell me whether this is where you are right now or whether this is the direction you're heading. And if there is a man in your life who has been trying to say this exact thing without quite finding the words for it, send this to him. Because this is the conversation he has been waiting for someone to have out loud.